I'm Vanessa Ruck, the girl on a bike. Welcome to my workshop. Now, in this series of videos, we are going to be talking about motorcycle chains and hopefully empowering you to feel a little bit more knowledgeable about how to get the best out of yours. Bike maintenance is one of those things I think so many of us just go, I haven't got a clue, I'm not going to think about it, and I'm just going to pay money to a dealer to sort out. Now, this is a series of videos that I'm partnering with Tsubaki chains to try and give you a little bit more knowledge and some information about chains and how you can feel empowered to take a little bit more control out of yours. Now, I've done a few different series like this year. For example, I also did one with Olin suspension to give us more power and knowledge about suspension. Now, I'm not going to promise to be here all technical. Actually, I'm going to promise not to be here being all technical because I want this to be understandable for all of us riders. So if you want to really geek out, then this isn't the video for you. This is a video to give you a good foundation of knowledge and feeling a little bit more confident about chains. Now, first of all, let's talk about the primary drive shaft. Now, the chain is an example of that. When you've got your engine, you've got to get the power of that engine from the engine to the rear wheel to make you move. Otherwise, it's not going to be a very fun motorcycle. And there are three different options for doing that, largely. The first one is a belt. Now, motorcycles with belts tend to be cruisers. My Harley Davidson Street Bob has a belt. They're great for being lower maintenance. They are pretty reliable, but they don't like really dirty conditions. So you're unlikely to see a belt on an off-road bike, for example. You've then got a drive shaft. This is a bit more of a cumbersome, fully enclosed system of getting the power to the rear wheel. And it does mean it's got massively reduced maintenance, but it's adds complications of the weight and the size and all that kind of things. And then you have the chain. Now, the chain is the most commonly sort of power delivery that we have on motorcycles. I've got some examples of some pretty dead chains in front of me, and I'm going to be talking about some of the things about chains that a lot of us don't necessarily realize, including some tips on the maintenance of them, and there are going to be some more detailed videos in this series on how to clean your chain as well, so stay tuned for those. So first of all, let's talk about the different types of chains that you have. So first of all, you have a standard chain. Now, this is probably the original chain that was created. So I have a 1966 Greaves up here, and this has a standard chain on it. It is a metal design, and there's no seals or lubrication. It is just links of metal together to make a chain. You then have an O-ring chain, which is putting a little bit more sort of research and development and technology into the chain. Having the O-rings effectively enables you to have a sealed unit within the chain which is filled with lubrication. Lubrication enables the joints to be a little bit more mobile, smoother, more flexible, which is of course going to give you advantages on the performance of the bike and its ability to cope with different conditions. You then have an X-type chain, which is going one step on from the O chain and has a more sophisticated lubrication system and joint system in there. You then might have heard the words sealed or unsealed. Now that really is connecting to whether it's got lubrication in it or not. So the standard chain would be unsealed and the X and the O would be sealed, just giving you some of the jargon and the technology chains used. Next thing to think about on chains is whether it is riveted or unriveted with a clip system. Now, if I take the Tsubaki chain out here, these ones are really filthy, so I'm going to avoid touching them till the end. You'll see that this chain it's in beautiful condition. My hands are already feeling a little bit lubricated from the lubricants on it, but you can see straight away that there are two ends. Now, that means that this lane needs to be connected onto the motorcycle, and that can be done with either a clip system or a riveted system. So I'm going to show you some tools on how to do that as well in a moment, but it's important one to know what is on your chain or how you could repair your chain, because if your chain was to fail while you were out and about riding, you'd need different things. So before I get into that more technical stuff, how do you tell what chain is on your motorcycle? Really good question. And it's not always easy just to look at it. To tell between the sealed and the unsealed, so a standard chain versus the O or the X, is quite easy, because if you look at the chain, it's pretty obvious that you've got little sort of O-rings and rubber parts in the chain. But the difference between an O and an X ring is a little bit more complicated. So I have an X ring chain here because this is what I like to run on my bikes. And it's got the sort of the little seals in there are a little bit less rounded, and an O-ring chain tends to be more of a rounded O seal, hence the name. The reality is it can be difficult to tell visually. The best thing to do is get up close and have a look at the manufacturing stamp that's on the chain. So on this chain, I can see that it's got where it was made and the name and the sort of model stamp of this chain on it. Get that, plug it into Google or even ask ChatGPT or something, and it's going to be able to tell you what type of chain that is. And that's going to be important if you're wanting to replace your chain. Your owner's manual is also another good source of information. And then of course the internet. If you're not sure at all, then you can find information on the internet. And the big chain companies like Tsubaki have really good information on their websites as well to help you identify which chain is on there. And if you're going to be changing your chain, it's important that you change your sprockets as well. Because if you think about the teeth on a sprocket, I'm going to get this new sprocket out of the box here. The teeth on the sprocket are going to be wearing with use on the bike, and you want that to wear together. Now, if you were to change your chain and not change your sprockets, then the old sprocket being worn and out of shape, the sprockets tend to end up almost like a little wave from the wear of being pulled round by the chain. That sprocket would end up wearing your chain out much quicker, so you end up spending more money in the long run because you're going to be getting through more chains, whereas if you change them together, they kind of form a relationship and they bond and work together. So that's one to bear in mind. So you know what type of chains are on your bike now. What are the benefits and the pros and cons of each of these types of chains? So a standard chain is really going to be best on a vintage bike, bikes that are ridden in dry conditions or slightly on the lower power sides, because they haven't got that lubrication. Because they don't have the lubrication themselves, you're going to need to do a bit more maintenance on them, putting more lubrication on them and making sure you're keeping them clean. And they're not going to like the dirty conditions. Now, if you go to an O-ring, you're then going to be putting it into more variation environments, and they're a lot more resistant to different environments such as mud, the off-road, the water and the different conditions, because they got lubrication in there. Now, if you think about the lubrication of a chain, the reason it's so important is this thing is moving at a colossal rate as you are pulling your throttle, and you want them to be smooth and just smooth effortlessly rolling around on your sprockets. And if they're not lubricated, cleaned and well maintained, then you're going to get higher resistance, you're going to get fatiguing, you might get more vibration, and all of that stuff is going to reduce your performance, cost you more money in the long run, and possibly be damaging to other parts of your bikes, particularly if you get a chain snap. And I've got a couple of chain snapping stories in a moment that I'm going to share with you. You then have the X type of chain, and that really is going to be, it's the most advanced sort of chain. The companies like Tsubaki have put in a lot of knowledge and research to ensure that the performance of the chain, the strength of the chain, the durability, the resistance to the environment, the lifespan and the amount of wear that you can put on it is at the highest, so you're going to get the highest service intervals. When you're doing racing, high performance bikes, or longevity, so for example on my rally bike, the X-type chain is going to be the most appropriate one to use. You are going to need to think about what kind of lube you're going to be putting on your chain. Not all chain lube is equal, and they are designed for different conditions. I've got a range of different random chain products here, from cleaners, which is really important. Check out my other video on how to clean a chain. I've got a dry lube, a wet lube. There's a totally different lube that goes on my rally bike, and I think explaining the lube on my rally bike is a nice way to visualize why the chain lube is so important. When you are putting a liquid as such, a lubricant, onto a chain, they're going to have different properties as to how they interact with the environment. Sand likes to stick to things if it's a sticky lubricant. Now, if you have a chain that is going to have an attraction to sand and the sand staying on it, that's going to be a very abrasive material to then be going around on your sprockets, and can be very damaging and grinding, fatiguing. So in the desert, you're going to want to have a dry lube type thing as an example. So do some research to make sure you're using the right sort of lubrication. Let's talk about how these connect now. So chains will always come with the link that connects them. So here I can see that I have the little link, the opposite side that presses onto it, and the 2X washer seals that go on there. To put that on, you're going to need a very strong hand or a chain pressing tool. So an example of a chain pressing tool, these are the sort of thing you can get on Amazon or eBay really cheaply. This is a free tech, and it's the tool that enables you to align the chain in here. You've got your little press that mates with the edge of the chain, and you simply twist it and it pushes and presses the chain on, because getting that link on evenly true and fully is going to be really important for it to seat correctly. It is possible to do these things with your hands if you are very strong. So a story of my chain snapping, I was doing the Brecons rally in South Wales. It was a really, really wet, snotty, I'm pretty sure a storm was hitting, and so there were some unbelievably colossal puddles. I don't know why my chain snapped. It was before I discovered that not all chains are equal and quality matters. I'm very aware of that. Possibly I haven't done my chain tension correctly as well, and maybe I just done too many hours without doing the correct maintenance. But basically there was this huge puddle. The puddle's really important because it was probably at the deeper level for my bike being able to go through it, but because it was that deep, I'd slowed right down and I'd backed off the throttle, which is very fortunate in the moment that my chain snapped. Basically it just went and I went into full throttle with no momentum because the chain had snapped, and I'm lucky that it just fell off. Next story coming up, I wasn't so lucky. Anyway, I was then on the side of the trail, and I was all smug because I had my spare chain link in my tool roll, and so I got the chain and I put it back on and I got my little chain link, and then I realized that I wasn't strong enough to get the chain back on. So one of the ways that you could get it on would be using something like a pair of flat-headed pliers, and you hold it and you press it back on. And I wasn't strong enough to do that. So I was then stuck on the side of the track, asked a couple of people going past if they could help me, and no one had any tools or wanted to help me. It was chucking it down with rain. So I ended up having to be rescued, and that was me out of the race. Expensive race entry, the whole effort to get there, and I didn't even get to finish it because I hadn't looked after my chain properly, and I didn't have a decent chain on there, and I didn't have the right tools. So that's one option. You also then have a chain which has a clip that goes on the side. You always want to make sure that the clip's going with the right direction for travel on the bike, so that the clip's going that way around and not that way with the wind. It makes sense when you see it. To get those on, I typically suggest using a mole grip. So something like this, you can squeeze and hold the two parts together, and then I'd use a little screwdriver, so little flathead screwdriver, something like this. you're holding it together, get the screwdriver onto the clip, and then a little tap of a rock or a hammer, and you can push it until the clip goes in, and make sure that it clips and engages, and you'll be able to see that the little circlip type thing, I don't know if it's actually called a circlip, but the little clip actually engages with the groove on the chain to make sure it's seated, and you can get that on. If you don't use the mole clips in the thing, I found it really, really hard. That's just what works for me. Let me know in the comments if you have a trick on getting those little things onto the chain. I'd be very interested to hear. And also let me know if you've got any questions. I love to hear from you. Let me know what chain is on your bike. Has this video helped you identify it? And get in the comments, and I will do my best to answer any questions. What else do we want to talk about? Maintenance, we've talked about. Okay, quality, I've mentioned it. Quality is varying on chains. I think it's like most things in life. If you go for the cheapest option from the budget brand, you're not going to get the same research development, durability, quality of materials that you're going to get from the more premium brands. And when you think about the fact that the chain is the primary source of power to your rear wheel, your chain breaks, you ain't going anywhere. You want something that's reliable. And when your chain breaks, it can do a lot of damage. Cue my next chain story. So, I was in Andorra. I was riding in the Pyrenees. I was riding with a friend who was a Dakar rider. And I'd say I was probably riding a little bit more gently on my bike. We decided to swap bikes, so I got to ride his Dakar rally bike, first ever rally bike I'd ever got to ride before I I didn't even know rallies existed really, other than this infamous Dakar thing. And he went on my poor little KTM, which I don't think was quite ready for his aggressive riding, and I don't think I had done my maintenance correctly, and so my chain tension was wrong. Anyway, he just disappears in front. He was gone in seconds. I caught up with him quite quickly because his chain snapped, or I say my chain snapped. And when you have a chain, this is a relatively decent amount of weight that's going at a lot of speed round those sprockets, powering your wheel, and it snapped and the chain kept going. And it went straight into my engine casing. And that was a £600 repair on my motorcycle, which I could have avoided if I had done my maintenance and had a decent quality chain. And that's another reason why I use the Tsubaki chains now on my motorcycles. So by having the decent chain, you're going to get the performance, the development that's gone in it. This is all a Japanese high tensile grade material, so we know it's strong. The lubrication and the design of it is in there for the optimum performance. It's going to reduce vibrations, going to reduce slack, all of the negatives that you just don't want in your chain. The fact that they come pre-stretched is quite important. I think traditionally chains weren't pre-stretched, which means you put your chain on, you do your chain tension, everything was perfect, you go out for a ride, and at some point, it could be 5 minutes in, it could be 5 hours in, your chain is going to start to bed and stretch, which is then going to put your chain tension out. And if you're not on it, you then have an incorrectly tensioned chain. And a too tight a chain or a too loose a chain, either end can be as damaging. So the Tsubaki chains all come pre-stretched, which means when you put them on and you put your chain tension on, you know that it's correct and it's not going to suddenly change on you as you start to ride, and that's a really, really important one. Performance, you've got consistent power delivery, you've got a consistent reaction from the throttle coming through to your wheel, you know how it's going to behave, and again it's that smooth, consistent power that is really important in the power. Having a chain that's of lower quality might save you some money when you buy it, but having it fail on you is going to potentially cost you a lot more. And if you buy decent kit with the sprocket as well being changed front and back, you're going to get the most life out of it. So actually by paying a little bit more, you're going to almost save money in the long run. That's the way I look at it. So I guess that's probably quite a lot of information about chains. Now, I haven't gone into really technical information, so I really hope that this is a manageable video of information that is going to make you feel a little bit more empowered. Please do check out the other videos in the series, and I just want to say a quick thank you to Tsubaki Chains for helping me with my chain knowledge to enable me to do this video for you. I have one more chain story, and that was on the Tiger 900 Rally Pro out in Morocco, and I did the 1000 Dunes Rally on it. And yes, you heard that correctly, I took a adventure bike that weighed 6 times my body weight into the dunes and the desert of Morocco. You can check out that whole series on my channel. It was pretty insane. And yes, I know how to pick up that motorcycle, and I definitely had to do it in the sand. Thankfully, I had a spare bit of chain in my bag, so we pull over on the side of the road where we stop quite abruptly because the chain snapped, and I get out my spare chain link and we get the tools out. We go to put it on and realize that my spare chain link is for the wrong chain, and it's not actually the right one for that motorcycle, which meant it was totally useless and it wasn't going to get me out any trouble. In Morocco, when you break down in a town, lots of people tend to come over and see if they can help you. Unfortunately, no one in that town had a Tiger 900 Rally Pro spec chain, and so we were again fortunate and able to call back to the bivouac, and we weren't that far away, and we had some people come and bring the right pieces of kit. So what have I learned from my chain experiences? One, buy decent quality chains in the first place, because you can trust them, they're reliable, and they are made for high performance, longevity, and consistent response on your motorcycle. Two, make sure that you carry the right spares to enable you to repair it should it fail. Brands like Tsubaki have a lot of confidence in their chains, and they don't even feel like that's too necessary. But when you're going into something like a desert race, I definitely go with the confidence of having the spares. Three, make sure that you know how to do your chain if you do need to do it, and you have the right tools with you if you need to repair it. I've learned from that. I should have learned the first time, but I didn't. I'm hopefully learned that now. And then 4, make sure you're doing your chain maintenance, the lubrication side, the cleaning side, and the tensioning side. More videos in my series on those. But that isn't me on chains. Over and out. Let me know if you've got any questions in the comments. I'm Vanessa Ruck, the girl on a bike. Thanks for watching.